Hi, back on the camera again. Yep, it's still me, but with a little bit less hair. Because I had my hair cut today, a couple of hours ago, 3 hours ago. Um, for today's video, I want to talk about cannabis. Cannabis, marijuana, hashish, are some of the proper names for it. Uh, it's also got probably hundreds and hundreds of different monikers and things that people call it. But yeah, cannabis. Um, First and foremost, I haven't smoked that stuff for a long time, or in a long time. It's been something like, to be honest, I can't really remember how long it's been, but I've been happily drug free, sober, and free of smoking weed. I started smoking it when I was quite young, literally just into my teens. And we used to smoke the resin, cannabis resin, because you didn't get really skunk in those days. You used to get something called Sensi occasionally. But yeah, um, I don't smoke weed, and I probably never will go back to it today. Just earlier on today, I actually was standing next to someone who was smoking it, and I kind of gave them a wide berth, left them alone to smoke it. I wasn't interested at all. I don't find it tempting. To be honest, the stuff makes me very, very paranoid, makes me anxious. It's Weed kind of plays games with your head. It kind of warps your mind over time. Um, Even though I don't think there's anybody on record of actually overdosing or a lethal overdose of weed. Some people smoke extreme amounts, and I did myself. I mean, I was in Amsterdam in the red light district for 2.5 weeks in my late teens, and I smoked an awful lot of it, even to the point where the locals were getting a bit worried about it. Um, yeah, and it's a gateway drug. No matter what anyone tells you, weed is a gateway drug, and by that I mean it opens the gate to other harder drugs. Generally, what happens is a teenager will start smoking tobacco and they'll drink a bit of alcohol, and then maybe a few weeks later they'll try smoking weed. Weed being another name for cannabis, yeah. And then after they smoke the weed, they want to try other stuff, so they try speed and acid and maybe the heavier stuff like the crack cocaine and the heroin, which even today have been dwarfed by fentanyl and crystal meth. Um, I also think that you shouldn't consider cannabis to be an innocuous drug. People generally consider that it's relatively harmless compared to Class A drugs, but it's not. It's extremely psychoactive. In some ways, weed is more psychoactive than heroin or cocaine. Um, and is it addictive? Yeah, it is addictive. The doctors will tell you that it's not physically addictive, but it's psychologically addictive. I'm not exactly sure where you draw the line between physical and psychological addiction. It took me about 2 weeks of not smoking weed before I kicked the habit. Some people will smoke it their whole lives. I know 3 or 4 people in town that have been smoking it every day for years, and they seem to get away with it. But it seems with my genetic condition, ostensibly a genetic condition, which may be predisposed to getting schizophrenia, you know, if you are susceptible to becoming schizophrenic, the cannabis will basically blow that wide open. This is what my first ever psychiatrist said. He said my illness was not drug induced schizophrenia. He said it was drug released schizophrenia. Um, you might wonder why I'd make a video like this, considering that cannabis is illegal. But to that, I would say that yeah, it is illegal, but it's not necessarily unlawful, which would be something you'd have to discuss with the magistrates if you were summoned to a magistrate's court. You can argue the case that it's not unlawful. And there's probably hundreds of thousands of people that smoke weed in this country. I don't think the police are really bothered about small personal amounts. And on that note, I should say that I never, ever, ever made money out of drugs of any sort. Not that I would admit that on camera, but you know. But and it's going to become legalized. You know, you might end up with the ironic situation where tobacco is banned, but you can get medical marijuana from your doctor. You know. Yeah, on that note, the CBD stuff. I think CBD just stands for cannabinoid or cannabinoid, but that's really helpful. You can buy it like in Holland and Europe. There's quite a few different companies are making CBD oil now, and that can be really helpful. You know? But yeah, I probably never smoke weed again. I probably won't ever even smoke tobacco again. I'm getting too old for it. You know, my mind is already opened wide enough. I don't need drugs to elevate my consciousness. I can do that through music and literature and good food and good company and travel and a host of other things. You know, I don't need a drug. What advice would I give to a cannabis smoker? The only advice I would give would be to not take it to extremes. Um, if you get to the point where the first thing you do in the morning is roll a joint, then that's the slippery slope. You'd be surprised how many professional business people smoke cannabis, but they kind of discipline their approach towards the drug by maybe just smoking at weekends or a little bit in the evening. That's one good thing about weed is it does help you to sleep. In a sense, weed is like the opposite of alcohol. Alcohol is kind of like drink, 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 smash, hangover. Yeah, but with weed, it's more kind of like all of a sudden I'm at the height. You smoke a joint, and all of a sudden you're up there, and then you slowly glide down with weed. You slowly come back down over about a 3 or 4 hour period. So in that sense, it's the opposite of alcohol, and it's that gliding down experience from the cannabis high that also contributes to its addictiveness. And by contradistinction, the alcoholic hangover is one of the main reasons why people stop drinking alcohol. I mean, people will do both. I mean, quite often people will drink alcohol and smoke tobacco. Cannabis, which I have done as well. Um, I mean, I can't tell the next generation to not smoke weed as I did. But I can strongly suggest it's not the way to go. Especially the youngsters that are smoking it, they're basically smoking it. And I'm not a neuroscientist, but people are smoking weed long before their brains are fully developed, which is probably a recipe for disaster. And the other sad thing is that most of the weed that we smoke is not natural. A lot of it is grown. A lot of these cannabis plants never see the sun. They get UV lighting instead. They're grown in artificial earth. They're given like I don't know. They become highly hybridized as well. At the moment, a new hybrid of cannabis is engineered. They'll try and create more. So there's an exponential kind of toxic complexity to the whole thing. So if people come up to you and say, "Oh, I'm smoking weed," you're on synthetics. They might say to me, "Oh, you're on clozapine. You're on a synthetic." But I smoke weed, which is natural. But it's probably not, unless you get the Jamaican bushweed, which I don't think anyone can get their hands on. But, Yeah, so that's a 10-minute video about weed. Um, at the end of the day, the only advice I can give would be the other. Before I stop this video, the other thing about weed is that it makes you highly susceptible to your immediate environment. The weed will magnify the peculiarities of your environment. I mean, there's a big difference between smoking weed on a park bench and watching the birds fly around and enjoying nature. It's what some kids do. They smoke a load of skunk, they start playing computer games, listening to death metal and drum and bass and all the rest of it. Yeah, just a few off the cuff comments, an unrehearsed video about weed. Um, so yeah, thank you very much.